Welcome back to the Lakeside Productions YouTube channel. In this series I'm repairing a 1940 40-foot seaplane tender and converting it back into a liveaboard, which it was converted to after World War II. The boat is constructed of double diagonal mahogany hull planking and oak ribs. I've been meaning to get a coat of primer onto the epoxy and fiberglass repair to the bow, so in order to get this complete I needed to use the rowboat as the boat is floating. And of course this white primer will have to be top coated in order to match with the brown, and we're probably going to go with Epiphane's enamel paint, I believe. Off the top of my head I forget which one it is exactly, but it will be in keeping with the brown that is on the lower hull. As you might have seen in the previous episode, we replaced the carlin, or quite a long section of the carlin, in the interior of the boat, that's directly underneath the cabin sides, and the deck planking also fits into that, or the deck supports of the deck planking fit into this. So in order to seal this entirely, I needed to remove the quadrant that was on the exterior of where the cabin sides meet the deck. So I cut that out, and then I applied a neat coat of epoxy to soak into the edge ply to make sure that was nice and sealed, and before applying thickened epoxy then. And this is also, I'm making sure to put a curve on this. This will also be touched up again, but it will be far when I do the epoxy and fiberglass work to the decks, just to make sure there's a nice gentle gradient that the epoxy can, or the fiberglass mat can conform nicely to that curve of the plywood, or of the deck to the plywood. Back inside, it's time then to secure the actual pine plank to the Carlson itself. I made sure to again apply neat epoxy to the exposed edge of the Carlson before applying thickened epoxy then to actually secure it, to bond it to the Carlin, and then also using brass screws, again ones that were long enough to go through the plank and the Carlson together, but not too long, and to make sure they were also strong too. So first I sanded down the pine using 120 grit sandpaper, and this is just so that when I get to either staining it or epoxying it, whatever I want to do to actually with the finish, I still have to come up with how I'm going to finish it, but I'd probably go with a wood stain, to be honest. So by sanding it first, it just makes the job a lot easier, because no tools, no power tools, or even hand sanding is going to be so difficult when it's actually secured there to get it even between all the joints and the roof supports. So this was the best thing to do. Prep it first, and then you've less work to do down the road. I needed to add a shim to just under where that sliding door is. This was just in order to get the pine plank out enough, as there was also the deck planking closest to the interior. It was actually rotten in a section, or that section broke off when I was removing the Carlin. So I made sure to put the shim in, another piece of wood, and then thickened epoxy. And those together built up that area nicely. And then with the epoxy, with the low density filler, it allowed me to get that nice curve finish. Like I said, that will take the epoxy, or sorry, the fiberglass, and like I said, that'll take the fiberglass nicely when we lay down the fiberglass mat and epoxy the decks in the near future, this summer. So back in the V-berth, I had to remove sections of the tongue and groove roof planking. And this was so I could access the little bits of the windshield support trim. These two wooden pieces that I'm actually going to replace with mahogany. And it's not such a big deal, because this gives me the option now later on to re-insulate that section of the roof. And I'll decide if I want to go on and resection or re-insulate more of the existing roof. Because as you can see, it's just on 2 layers of regular styrofoam or styrene. So I want to replace this with something obviously that's much better. So these windshield supports were just totally rotten. They were riddled with dry rot, and I guess, over the years there was leaks there at the forecabin where the plywood seams are. They must have leaked through there. Also, roof leaks could have been a reason that led it to rotting out like this. So from the one that I could get intact, or most of it intact, I transferred my angles from this, and this allowed me then to replicate the two of them using the mahogany. So I'm also going to do my best to waterproof and prevent any water ingress in the future getting into the windshield through the plywood edge seams, especially where they join. That is so important to make sure those joints are sealed. And you'll see as I'm putting up securing the trim in place, new mahogany kind of supports there for the windshield, they help pull in the actual plywood of the cabin as well. So once I cut down the new mahogany supports to size, I just had to go over it with the hand plane, and that just got it down to a nicer finish. It removed any of the saw blade marks from the skill saw. So I attempted to use mahogany sawdust, fine mahogany sawdust, and mixed in with the epoxy to kind of camouflage these screw holes that you can see in these supports that I'm making up. And actually this is because this mahogany was a large section of plank, which was the mantelpiece. It was my grandmother's mantelpiece and my grandfather's mantelpiece. And it's just fantastic to see that it gets a second life and, you know, gets put into the boat, as she recently got a new fireplace and mantelpiece put in. It was great to actually see, and it's just wonderful to see it get a second life. So as you can see, I removed any of the old caulking or sealant that was used here on the wheelhouse cabin edges where they join, the plywood edges. And then it allowed me, once I had them clean, it allowed me to put in thickened epoxy. And like I said, that'll tighten up nicely and it will create a watertight seal. So once I'd pre-drilled and countersunk for all the screws on the exterior of the plywood, of course I dropped, by drilling through the plywood, and that support wasn't secured right. I should have put a pilot hole in place and lightly screwed in before securing my newer screws. So just like in the previous episode, I also dropped the carlin into the bilge, and I had it glued up and everything, but it was just my luck. And again, it happens, it repeats itself, but yeah, it's gas. You can also check out the previous episode where we actually installed the carlin. My father helped me with this as well. So make sure to check out that episode, and you'll see the link here on screen somewhere if you haven't seen it yet. So I also have a PayPal link in the description below if you feel like further supporting my project there. Can't thank you guys enough for all the support throughout the years. It's been fantastic. And this is going to be the year, this is the summer where we're going to actually be living aboard, and we're going to get it sealed and weather tight. So that is the goal, that is the mission, and I hope you guys stay tuned and come along for the ride. So make sure to subscribe if you haven't subscribed already, and leave a like if you enjoyed the episode. As always guys, stay productive and have fun creating. I will see you all in the next episode.